left off, I had the base basically roughed out. I finally managed to get Home Depot to ship me a door without damaging it in transit. This time I've opted for one with a keyhole rather than just a screwdriver hole. I thought that would be a little bit nicer. So what I'm going to do now is measure this inside frame and then center it on the cabinet here so that I can put this on. And then I will, on the inside, figure out how to frame this in so I can screw it in these mounting holes. So the standard Vewlix has a cabinet or a door like this that opens down, but I think for my needs, what I'm going to do is mount it so that it goes right to left. So I drew out the lines for the frame here, and I'm going to just rough cut it out with my jigsaw because the actual frame overlaps this, so you won't even see how good or bad that line is. So I'm going to do my best to stay on the line because then I'll know it'll fit in there, but this should end up actually coming out right where the back of this bottom piece is, and then this part along the bottom is where it meets up with the frame, that inner frame that's the pine that I used in the front. And before I can even get my jigsaw in there, what I need to do is drill a large hole in there just to get the saw blade in and then make my cut. Alright, it's cut out. My neighbor is mowing the lawn. Let's test the fit. Alright, so it fits. You probably can't tell, but this isn't exactly parallel here. This corner needs to come in a little bit, so I'm going to trim that out a little bit more to allow it to just tilt a little bit. And then you could stop and leave it with this difference in height between the door and the cabinet. But what I'm going to do is make it hard on myself and trace around this, and then use a router bit to trim down a little bit of material so that this sits flush inside the face of the cabinet. So I just tested my router for two things. I set it to what I thought was a 1/16 of an inch depth to create this indentation here. And then I also marked a line where this guide is, and that's going to let me know where my gate on there meets up with the bit so that I know how far to set this guide to get the lines perfectly straight on the front of the cabinet. So when I test fit this and hold it up right here, it's perfectly flush. So I'm really happy with the depth of my router. So now all I need to do is set up my guides and route the actual front of the cabinet. I have my first guide in place. I've also routed in a little bit here without that in the way so that I can get my router in the way. I'm not going to bother to plunge it. I already have it kind of locked in position. So I'm ready to do this first front indent. So I finished the straight routing of this outer edge, and you can see here I've got a lot of this to sand off, and then the corners are round because the router bit is round. So what I'm going to do is use this utility knife just to cut this into a straight corner. Now that the corner's straight, I'm going to use a sanding block to not only sand this top fluff off there, but I'll run it along this edge as well. So I think you can tell in the video, but now that looks super clean. So I'm just going to do that for the rest of the front. So I test fit this, and it looks like it's going to work. I do have a little bit of a gap here. I guess I made it a little too big, so I might fill that in with some wood filler before I paint it. But for now, what I'm going to do is put this wooden part of the base, or the front, back on the base, and glue it and screw it, and then I'm going to find a way to mount this door in there with screws and stuff like that. So here we go. So you can see I have the top bar in place and the bottom bar. I have the bottom bar marked. I'm going to drill those holes, and I'm going to mark the top and drill those holes, and then I'll put the door on.
So now I have a nice high quality access door. On the front of the cabinet. The only other thing I have left to do really for the base is to put the feet on. That will be in the instructions for the PDF. I'm going to wait because I don't want to get them all dirty from my garage moving this around. So that'll probably be the last thing I put on once this is actually all finished.